I'm Diego Cortez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop.
Scooped!
Brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And we often forget to mention our guest. His name is Alec Torelli. And he's recently won 2 tournaments back-to-back at Bellagio, which is quite amazing.
Like it was nothing.
Like it was nothing. Other people spend a whole lifetime trying to win
Right.
one of these. He was runner-up to Kenny Tran in the heads-up.
The prestigious World Series of
Very
Poker heads up.
prestigious. I mean, this is the real deal. This is not, just your LOL document.
Correct.
And finished second heads up at the World Series of Poker. But he's also one of these guys who you see online playing for the super high stakes,
The highest.
no limit, the highest, and it's going to be fun talking to him and hearing about his adventures.
Let's get him in here.
So we had Kenny Tran here, and he was telling us about the heads up championship at the World Series. He was runner up.
Right.
And one of his key strategies that he talked about, he said, was playing really slowly just to try to unnerve his opponents.
Confuse the online player that's used to
Not confuse, frustrate.
Yeah, that's the best word. I misspoke. Yeah.
I mean, did that have any effect on you, or?
Yeah, I mean, some hands, it seemed like it would be an obvious decision one way or the other. It seems like he would have made his decision, either before the flop or on the flop with a given bet, and then it seems like, he's smart enough to know, hey, if this guy raises me, I'm going to do the X or Y, right? And so I would raise him all in, and then he would sit there and contemplate, and I'm just like, well, he's either getting priced in to call if he has any sort of made hand or draw, otherwise, he's bluffing and has nothing. And he's thinking in a, rather obvious spot, and I'm just thinking to myself, wow, maybe he has no clue, right? or he's just trying to tilt me, and I was like, this is very frustrating.
It was the latter.
It was the latter for sure, because I've heard someone else use the same remark, and I was like, wow.
That's a non-exploitable strategy, though, because
really,
that would drive me insane.
It's a free roll, too, because if it doesn't tilt me, it's fine. And if it does, it's going to put me off, or maybe he'll get a read on me and be able to
that would be enough to beat me.
Yeah, and apparently it worked for him, so apparently it was. But.
Well, right, we don't know if that was the key or not, but it didn't affect his play negatively, at least.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like a free roll in his regard, because if it might work, and if not, it might, he could see something that would pin me off my game or how I react in a certain spot with a certain hand.
I mean, we talk a lot about online play versus live play, and making the transition over. You've made your reputation online, but now you've had big success in live tournaments, and you just won back-to-back tournaments at Bellagio, and finishing runner-up in the heads-up of the World Series is a big, big deal. So, what's been your experience as far as whether it's been the same type of play or same style, or whether you've had to make some adjustments to succeed in the live?
Right. I think there's always necessary adjustments to make. I started playing live, when I was in high school and stuff, when we played live games, and I played live at the casino a lot, and that was my primary experience starting out. And I would say the main reason I didn't play live until recently is just because I just turned 21,
Right.
So it wasn't like I was playing online all this time and I was 30, and then I was like, maybe I should try live poker. It was I was dying to try live, and I'd go so far as to go to Australia and a bunch of countries in Europe and Bahamas to try and play live.
And play live against real players, because when you were first playing live, you weren't playing against champions.
Right,
presumably. Exactly.
And presumably the events were smaller and there wasn't prestige or big cashes to be won, or lots of money to be made. So it was fun to get to test the waters in other countries, and then really have a lot of preparation for events like the World Series and big US events that could potentially do really well for you. Whereas some people, they it just could be the way that their life in poker dictated, to where they just turned 21 and that's the first time that they decided to play live. But for me, it was I was trying to all this time to get prepared for it, so that when I come to Vegas, it's the big test, or final exam or something.
And was it what you expected, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's bad to say, I snuck into Vegas for 3 years to play live cash games.
Yeah. You know what? I think you're a bad person.
Cuff me. No, I mean, I would play live in the casinos and stuff, and the cash games before, and so I knew all the people in Bellagio, and then actually I think a lot of people were they found out it was my first World Series, and a couple people came out to me and hey, I remember a big hand, you beat me out of.
Didn't you beat me out of a lot of money?
Or I beat you out of a big of money, and you must have been 18 or something, right? And I was yeah, and they were well, I was thinking of carding you because I just read on your blog you just turned 21 or something, and then I was yeah, it's pretty funny, but.
No, you came to my attention just watching the super big games on Full Tilt, and I'm gonna embarrass myself by trying to pronounce your screen name.
I say Trujillo, so you don't have to go through the steps.
Oh, okay.
Just cut you off and make. No.
How did you find yourself in those giant games so young? Like, did you won your bankroll?
Yeah, I was definitely playing like above my means at times, and I won the F-Tops event online. It was like, 250,000
the coveted gold
or
jersey,
something.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Not so coveted anymore.
Right,
but
the F-Tops main.
Still coveted.
Yeah. There's just a lot of them. I won the F-Tops main, and then I was playing like 25-50 at the time, and so I was living in Australia at the time, and so I had like my party poker account set up over there, and so I was playing like pretty regularly on party, and I was like crushing the games on 25-50 over there, and then.
Winning
the
main
game
event at F-Tops gives you a boost.
Right, exactly. Like ego
right
boost more than anything, like more than money. And so I was like, I could beat these games. And I jumped in and I ran well for a long time, and then lost them at the end and realized, like regardless of your like skill, this is pretty high to be playing. Like
when you were playing in those super high games earlier, when maybe your bankroll wasn't what it is now,
right.
Did you ever go broke or just take some hits?
I actually like did really well. Like I had a week where I made like 500 or something, and I was like, wow. This is sick. And then like I went on vacation like that next week up to Gold Coast in Australia, and then I took a couple weeks off, and I was like, wow. I was like super robust now. I was like, this is sick. Like I could do anything,
It sinks in.
Yeah, I was like
is.
sitting there. I was
right.
like, wow, I have like $1 million. I was like 19. And I was like, wow, I can do anything. And then like I lost some back afterwards, and then like went on a downswing, but like last summer, and then I kind of like grinded my way back and started playing like smaller stakes.
But that's the thing. As much money as that is. For those stakes,
it's not that much.
You can lose
exactly.
that, yeah.
In real life,
if you
it
win
just
500,
convinces you, oh, this is a lot of money. I can buy, a house.
But I know.
Online, you can lose it in
right.
Exactly, like 5 sessions, right? And then I had a few bad sessions, and I was like, this is just stupid, like. But it took me losing a lot. Fortunately, I'd cashed out a lot at that point, and like, I bought some stuff and whatnot, and so I had like money offline and stuff too. So that like, when I did have a big downswing online, I took some time off, and I could like put more back on and like start playing smaller and stuff.
Did that affect? Just obviously short term it had to affect what games you played just because of your bankroll, but longer term did it have an effect on what size swings you were willing to take or how you dealt with swings in general?
I think that was pretty much like, like pushing past the threshold. Like anything now seems like, even though it is like a lot of, like even though it might be more money relative to your net worth now, it's like, well, I've had days where you lose 6 figures, and it's like, it's not as bad as that day.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having like a bad football practice. Like even if you're out of shape now, it's like, well, I remember when I was in shape, I did like this, and it's way harder. So like, you could do it once, like doing it again is,
I think it's lucky to get it out of the way early,
right,
and learn from it, because if you actually manage to avoid it just through luck for a while, you start to think you're invincible, and then when it hits, it might
bad.
be.
And I did, of course. Like, how could you not? Especially when you're like younger, when you're 19, 20, like. You always think you're invincible, regardless of like having, 6-figure upswings in poker to boost your ego even more than you need it.
That's insightful because when I was 19 and 20, even though I didn't have any money, I still thought I was invincible.
Of course,
right.
but add like an F-Tops win and all this money to it, and then like you're just like have this place in Australia doing whatever you want. And you're like, wow, I really am, and then you like hit reality, like boom, and then you're like.
We were talking to a very well-known player, multi-million-dollar bankroll and multi-millions of winnings, and asking him, how come he didn't play in the really big games online that much? That he'd play sometimes, but just not regularly. And he was saying, I'm too old for the swings. The swings just eat me up. It's like I can win, and just look it up in the databases, I know he's won, but it's one of those things where even if you win more than you lose, the losses just
like
start
so
eating
stressful.
at you.
Everyone says the losses are much more painful than the wins.
And they are.
And I remember reading like in. I forgot what book it was I was reading recently. It talked about, it wasn't like a poker book, but it talked about like mindset, and like it was like a happiness type book, and it talked about like how your overall happiness is like diminished by like X times 2 when you lose, whereas like when you win it's like only X, So you have to win like 3 times as much. Yeah, maybe it's higher than X times 3. I think it's like X times 3 or 4. Right? Because there's a lot of things that go into it.
Especially
when you lose.
if they add up.
Right, exactly.
My happiness is like a capped game.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you lose, it's like, you can keep losing.
Uncapped.
But when you win, it's like,
right.
small cap, right? So that's why it's like another downside, too, that people don't realize, like, really playing within your means is like...
So, I think that I know this, but you didn't go to college?
I did, actually.
I'm sorry, fill me in.
No, I went to SMU in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
I actually had a scholarship there. Like, people don't know.
How did I miss this? Because I read a lot of your blog. I apologize.
You talk to me and you're like, this retard had a scholarship. Right? But like, I really did. I had a... I actually applied to 4 schools, and I got into 4. I got into USD, University of San Diego, Colorado at Boulder, TCU, which is Texas Christian, right next to
Horned
SMU.
Frogs.
Of course.
Right, and you Fort Worth. Okay, you guys are familiar. And then SMU, and I decided to go to SMU.
David Williams went to SMU.
Right. My deciding factor. I'm just kidding. But
I went there with Eric Dickerson briefly.
Yeah,
I was
Craig
part of
James.
the Pony Express. I was the third member. Sorry,
oh, the Pony Express, right? Yeah. Wow. That's
I was like,
called.
I usually can't
Eric
say this to
Dickerson,
anyone under 40.
Craig James,
Adam Schoenfeld. They didn't have too many New York Jews on the team. Go ahead.
no, it's fine. I'm just joking. So I went there for 3 months, and then I came back I came back to Orange County. When I say came back, I don't mean Vegas. I meant Orange County, and then. I took that rest of the year off, and I was like a big affiliate on Party Poker, and I made a lot during doing that, especially for how old I was. And then kept playing poker online and did some other stuff as well. And then I decided to go back to school that next summer. I was like, wow, I did really well, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. And then I went back, and it went better than the first time because I didn't drop out halfway through. I finished the semester, but only took 2 classes. And so the first time I studied business, and then the second time I went back, and I was like, I don't really like that much. So I did psychology and philosophy, which I liked philosophy and psychology, but...
Those are both good for poker.
Yeah, but just school in general was I don't know.
I feel the same way.
So I finished the semester, and then I came back that December, and then I haven't been back since.
So, you're from Orange County, which is an affluent area.
Very.
But you were always a hustler, and I don't mean that in a to denigrate. You were a hustler in that you were working from a young age. You describe yourself as a full-time degenerate from the age of 13.
Just
give us a little background
bad.
for those who don't know.
Well,
I don't think it's bad. I just think it's
I like it because it's kind of old school. In our generation, that was a very common prelude to a poker career.
Right.
Younger guys now are guys who they go to really good colleges or they've got great jobs, but then they're just find the poker lifestyle. They just kind of drift into that.
Right. So or they big video games, but they're not socially
But you're a little more old school then.
Yeah, I guess my friends always say I always try to hustle prop bets, and sometimes I'm not amazing at prop betting, but it's sometimes I'm so convinced on my position they're scared to bet me because they think I'm right, and then they find out later I was really far off. I remember we were in the Bahamas last year in January, and I was training for a triathlon at this time, and I was very egotistical about my swimming ability because I was just learning to swim, and I was like, wow, I became very good in a short time at swimming. And so, those lazy rivers you sit and you float down?
Yeah.
Well, I was convinced I could swim upstream in the lazy river. And I was like, I'll bet you 1K or some, whatever amount, and that I could swim upstream on the river. And they're they were so convinced in my position because none of my friends swim that they're like, no, we won't bet you.
Right.
And then so for fun I tried it, and I got from here to from me to you, and I was like, that's impossible. And they're just
with all your limbs giving out.
and I'm kicking like a damn fish, trying to get out there, and I was like, that's impossible.
Lucky you didn't drown.
They figure this is a Titanic Thompson.
And they're just you hustle so many prop bets, I'm not going to bet you. And so it works out well for me because the ones I can't win, they don't even bet me sometimes. So I was wow,
in general, it's not good policy to accept prop bets from a good bettor.
Right.
So and you're 100% convinced, which is very
it's like
good bluff.
No, I wasn't bluffing. I really genuinely thought I could do it, but I realized I was so far off.
Sometimes the best bluffs are when you misread your hand.
Right, exactly. Because you're so confident. You're like, wow, I really did.
I'm all in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even when we say hustler too, it's not even in the sense of hustling someone. It's just in the sense.
No, I mean because you were working.
Being a gambler, that the background is not so much.
It's usually a frowned upon term, or but I know you didn't mean it like that.
Right, but a hustler, old school hustler who is just willing to gamble on.
Well, because you worked,
and
hand out
poker.
Flyers. You were
So you must have. Yeah. Okay.
I went through all of it. That's why I was surprised I missed the SMU
in charge
thing.
of the research department.
Oh, okay.
Food and beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a flyer delivery. I'm sure you know, but I had a flyer delivery company. When I was in high school, and I passed out flyers for my parents' real estate company. But I would multitask. I would get other delivery companies, say you wanted your house painted, a painting company, I would put them both at the same time, so I'd be getting X times however many flyers I had per house, and I was like, wow, that seems a lot smarter. And then eventually I just would pay my friends to do it, and they would get paid for the first amount of flyers, and I would just get all the excess for free. And I was like, wow, this is residual. I don't have to do any work. So I was just
right. And poker is and poker is of course is the anti-residual because you got to keep playing to keep making money.
Yeah.
Unless you figure out some other angle.
Unless you stake people or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, in that case, yes.
That could be a negative residual.
Right.
And usually is.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a high variance residual, right? That's to say the least.
And also, you need a collections department. I mean, there are a lot of aspects to it. But, that brings to mind the question, which is poker something that drives you in itself, or is it more a means to an end where it's another thing that you're good at and that has made a lot of money and kind of serves that purpose? But because we've had kind of both. I mean, we've had people here who say, I just love playing poker, it's great that I can make money at it, or the people who are like, I found out I'm good at it, and I'm going to make a lot of money, and in 5 years, hopefully I don't have to play anymore.
Right. I think I'm like a hybrid. Like, I think Mark Voss would be like the latter. Like, he just would really want to, you know, like from what he said, we're like decent friends. And then, you know, some people are just like, you know, I really love playing. And I think for me, it's like a blend of both. Like, whereas I started, I was like, you know, if I play a lot, and like I remember the first time I won like $12 or something like that, and I was like, well, if I win this every time for X amount, I could buy a car.
Right.
You know, and so at first it was like, you know, I thought I was good because I won.
Or invest it and actually have residual income
Right.
from poker.
Wasn't thinking that at the time, you know, like 16-year-old, I wanted a car. But yeah, exactly. So I was like thinking at the time, you know, like if, you know, I'm like, am I good enough? If I'm good enough, I could just make this amount of money and do this. And then eventually, I just like really enjoyed playing. You know, like you can't put in that many hours of doing something you don't like unless you're forced to. But with poker, you're really not. You know, so I really enjoyed playing, and I found that I was getting better, and I like talking to people about hands, and I still do. Like Andrew and I talk like at least like, you know, 5-10 hands a day. Yeah, Andrew Roble, like we pretty much roommates out here, so we talk like, you know, 5-10 hands a day. We discuss and like break them down and think a lot about them, and it's like I still enjoy doing it. And like now, you know, you probably don't need to do as much to beat like some smaller games, but we still enjoy it. It's like, oh, you know, it's like chess. You know, it's just always like something new and interesting. So for me, it's both. I don't think I want to play like, you know, my whole life, but that's not because like I want to just have enough money to sit in the sun and do nothing. It's like I just want to do other things that I enjoy that perhaps will make income for me as well. You know.
Now, you played in this legendary home match private game in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Which one? First one blank, and I was like, I just read this today.
Yeah, no, I didn't know where
against
you were
that NYU Dave game.
Yeah, Perky. Oh, yeah.
And tell Diego a little bit about that game.
Yeah, I don't know anything.
Yeah, this is really
well,
interesting.
I mean, the whole
you
story.
Flew from Germany.
The whole
to play
story is
home
kind of
game.
ridiculous because I was in Rome with Durr and Alan Sass, and I was actually in like Australia before this. Like after I went to Gold Coast, I went back home to Australia for a couple months, and then I went up to Manila to meet Mark Voss, and I was with my roommate now, who's Mike Pesic, Sapster, and so we hung out in Manila, and they went to Amsterdam, and I stayed in Manila because like I forgot why something happened, and I was like, you know, they were in Amsterdam, and then I was on AIM like in my room by myself, and then Durr's like, hey, I'm in Rome with Alan, you should come. And I'm like, well, Rome sounds more fun than Amsterdam. So I called Mike, and I was like, you know, I'm going to go to Rome. So I went to Rome, and then we stayed there for a week or two, and then I was going to go home, but I didn't really have a flight. So I went to Germany to visit, like, a girl that I had, like, seen in Australia. And we met on that week in Gold Coast, and she lived in Germany. So I was like, okay, I'll just go to Germany and hang out with her, because it's, like, right near Rome, you know, relative to the U.S., right? And so I was there, and I was there for like 2 days. Like, it was like some German holiday festival or something, I don't know. And then I'm like online.
Oktoberfest? Yeah.
No, it wasn't that. It was like a unique holiday to Stuttgart, which is where I went. It was like their like independence or their like celebration, you know, like the celebration of the renewal of their city or something like, you know. Anyway, it was like a big party. We all were drinking, whatever. And so I was playing online like at night. You know, or like during the day because it was at night in New York or something like that. And so Perky was on. We would play Heads Up regularly, and we played all through Rome when we were in Rome together. And like, you know, we would all play, and like we killed him in Rome when we were in Rome, right? And so we were playing, and he's like, you know, I have no more money online or something like that. I don't know if that's what he said, maybe. And he's like, you know, I don't have money online. He's like, I can't beat you guys online, right? But he's like, live, I'll kill you because you guys can't play live because like you can't like read people and stuff. And I'm like,
that's
wow,
a challenge you love.
And I was like, okay. He's like, well, come to New York and play me. And I'm like, you know, when? And we're typing in AIM like on the 300, 600 game. He's like, when? He's like, well, come this week. And I'm like, seriously, like, because I'm like, I'm in Germany with my girl, like, I'm not gonna come. And he's like, no, come this week and I'll leave. And then so, you know, I called Katrin and I'm like, you know, sorry, babe, like, I have to go.
This was a good part of the story. Like, with no notice, he's like, I'm not gonna be seeing you again.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't see you anymore. She spoke like limited English, you know.
Good
like,
preparation for
enough,
going with a gambler, you know.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm sorry, I have to go to New York. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I can't explain, but I have to leave. And so this was like 2 a.m., right? Or something like that. And I got on the flight at like 9 a.m. You know, like I didn't even sleep. I just packed my stuff and went. And Durr, actually, I was on AIM in my hotel just waiting for my flight. And Durr was like on a layover in New York on his way back from Rome. Because he didn't go to, he was going back to, where is it, like Boston or something like that. He was going back there. So he was in New York. He's like, oh, I'm in New York on a layover. And I'm like, oh my God. Don't get on your plane. I'm like, just go to get a hotel. Like, text me where you are, and I'll be there in like 12 hours or 20 hours or something, right? And so he got a hotel in downtown New York And I explained to him the story, and he just didn't even go to his flight to Boston. He got a hotel in downtown New York, and I like met up with him, and I was like, hey, long time no see, you know. We just went and played Perky like all week long.
And you played him 200, 400, no limit?
Yeah. We played 2-4 no limit.
And you had enough cash with you, or what about the logistics? Because it's one thing to come to Bellagio.
Oh, it was pretty ridiculous. I don't know if I put this in my blog or told anybody, but like, we played like in I don't know if I should say whose it is, but a guy's apartment in Trump Towers. So it's like an extremely baller apartment, like overlooking entire Manhattan, like on 55th and 5th, like near Rockefeller Center, right?
Factual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a place in New York, so I know New York pretty well. But anyway, so we were playing there, and you know, we would play him 200, 400, and then like we didn't play with cash on the table. He's just like, if I lose, I'll go to the bank and give you like, you know, I'll give you cash.
Right.
And so like, you know, during the day, like we would play him at night, but during the day I would go to like all the designer stores. And like I went to Louis Vuitton, you know those big boxes that they have, the luggage boxes that are like $5K?
Steamer trunk.
I like almost pre-bought one because I'm like, I'm going to win so much money, I'm just going to put all my cash in this. I carry like a briefcase.
You're going to need a cash transport.
Yeah, like back to LA, and like my little briefcase, like Louis Vuitton briefcase filled with cash. But the logistics were terrible. The first game we played, my friend flew out from Connecticut that I was like good friends with online, but I never met. He dealt for us the first game, like an arbitrary dealer, and then like the guy whose house it was dealt, and like his maid dealt, and his assistant dealt.
This is the part.
I think Durr dealt one day, but like the first game we played, sorry to cut you off. The first game we played, we were like scrambling around the apartment for decks, and we're like, you know, there's no decks we got to play with. So we count out the cards in the deck, and the deck had 51 cards. And he's like, well, the 10 of diamonds is missing, and I'm like, well, I don't care. And then he's like, I don't care either. So we just played the first match for 100,000,
one card
with no 10 of diamonds,
$100,000 freeze out. And 51 cards.
With just 51 cards.
They didn't want to wait the 10 minutes to go downstairs in Manhattan and find
we didn't want to go like find a card, so we sent his assistant to find cards. And we were just like, we'll play with 51 cards because, like, you know.
This is to your advantage to figure how.
I mean, who cares? Right? It doesn't really matter that much as long as you don't have pocket tens or something. Like, I mean, you know.
Well,
but like, he equally knows how it affects his hand relative to mine. So I was like, you know, just don't draw to like 10 high straights. And
but
stuff.
You can presumably you can use the information better than him.
Right. So I mean, it didn't. I wasn't thinking that. I was just like, I'd rather not wait because I'm like a deej. So I just was play. But it was really funny, you know. I don't know if I put that on my blog or told anybody, but we had some ridiculous like aspects to the whole story.
Well, the
whole thing is absurd.
The whole thing is absurd from the get-go.
It's
you
too
know,
bad
like,
this wasn't shot on video.
I know,
this could be a great documentary.
Like, people would be like, you know, that's like in a movie, right? But it really was.
And it would have to be made up, but it's not.
Exactly. It was like that's too good to be like a true story, but like
this is
it's one of the most ridiculous happenings.
This really is, and it's all guys who are like in their early 20s at the oldest.
But an old school style as opposed to
like playing in his house.
But he ended up winning, right?
Well, the thing is, like, we...
you guys were all pieced out to each other.
Right, because, you know, we were playing with 100,000 freeze outs. We didn't want to swing, like, $500,000 or $1 million if we ran bad. So we took pieces of each other, like, you know, and whatnot. But I played him twice, and I won one and lost one. And then Z, who's you're in danger, he played him once and lost, and Durr played him once or twice and lost. Wow. So we lost overall, but, I mean, you know, small sample size and whatnot, but...
That's the surprising end to the story. You figure that this sort of story ends this guy.
Well, it was a little further.
So it's NYU Dave, and I'm wondering if I played with him like years ago when he actually I knew a kid whose name was
like 23.
This guy was at NYU, but he could have been like 19 years ago when I played him.
Oh yeah.
And he played in the underground clubs in New York, and I'm just wondering if it's the same guy because this guy was
like really loud and like
and super aggressive.
Yeah.
You know, and like but you know giant swings, but this is in a tiny game.
Right.
A game you guys wouldn't even consider playing in now,
but I'm
like
sure he
5
lost
or 6
like
years
20,
ago.
30,000.
But I'm wondering if it was him.
It probably was.
His screen name was Perky Schmurky.
Yeah.
And this was a little nugget that since you put in your blog, I can say.
Oh, yeah.
Why was he named that? Do you want to say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's very open about it. The first time I met him, I was like, you know, why are you named Perky Schmurky? And he's like, well, I do Percocets regularly. And he would like take Percocets during our match, and he's like, "Oh, I'm oked up," you know.
Opiates.
Yeah, he just like take Percocets and be like, "Tank."
I haven't seen him online recently.
No, the kid, I don't know. I haven't talked to him too much
sound
recently.
like a long term.
But you know, we played like a few freeze outs when I got back home, like online. We played like 50-cent dollar, and we just agreed to play for $50K a match, and I won like 3 in a row, and so. I guess this is sort of the end of the story. Like, I bought a car and, like, put his name on my license plate, you know?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I put, like, T.Y. Perky on my license plate. Yeah,
him.
Because, like, you know, we would always, like, badger each other. Like, you know, I remember one hand, like, I got it all in with a set to an overpair on the turn for, like, 120,000, and he hit a jack on the river for, like, top set.
Right.
And so my phone rings, like, 30 seconds later. It's like, hey, how do you feel about that? And I was like, wow, what an asshole. But we, like, needle each other constantly because it's the accepted ritual, you know? It's kind of like Phil Locke and Antonio Sfandiari. Like, they like slow roll each other for like humor. They needle each other when someone else busts in a tournament, you know. So this was him and I had this dynamic to our relationship. So like, you know, I bought a car and I was like, well, you're gonna call me and tell me you beat me. I'm just gonna put your name on my license plate, you know. So it's pretty funny.
So let's just jump ahead a little bit because you just had an amazing set of circumstances happen in back-to-back Bellagio tournaments, and you were heads up with Jonathan Little in both of them.
I know, and the same.
How does that happen?
I know, right? And the same guy got sixth in both tournaments too.
So
and
rigged.
they say that online poker is rigged.
Yeah,
right.
I know. Just you have a bigger sample size, but it is pretty nuts.
So those were both. What events were those, and how much did you get?
The 3K and the 5K, respectively, and the 3K. God, it's sad.
You don't have to be exact.
It's sad I don't remember. I think 90,000 and then 125. But the 125, there was like a 25K seat to the Bellagio main included.
Awesome. But that's still amazing. Heads up to win 2 tournaments back to back, essentially.
Yeah,
Awesome. 2 days later,
right,
against the same opponent.
Yeah,
and to beat him both times.
I know, it was
which
crazy
gives you
too.
Dominance over him for a
right.
long time.
I wish. I mean, like I like John. I wish it was someone like like. Not like Andrew that I'm really good friends with, but even someone like that would just be hilarious.
Now you're gonna get a thank you, John Little.
Yeah, no, because see, we don't have that dynamic. Like, he's really nice, and we just like friends, whatever, whatnot. But it'd be funny if it was someone like that busted me out of a tournament, or that we constantly like badgered each other or something, you know.
So, and now you're a regular triathlete?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say regular, but I did a triathlon the end of September. Actually, like the day before I came, well, I went to Zion to go hiking, and then I went to Vegas. But the day before I left, I did my triathlon. So I was pretty proud of. I did.
Was this like full Ironman distances?
No, it was Olympic distance, like the one they do in Beijing, the one they did in Beijing. Like
what's the run? How far is the run?
It's, well, I guess the swim is a mile, the bike is 25, and the run is 10K. So 6.2.
I could brush that aside with no difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough for me because I'd never done any of the 3 disciplines before. Like, the farthest I ran was like a 5K, and I never swam a lap in my life. Like, I got in the pool the first time.
Swimming is what would destroy me.
Yeah, and then the first time I bought a road bike for the triathlon. Like, I had never biked before in my life. You know, like, obviously I biked. Like, but I never
seriously,
never seriously biked. You know, like, so
I call that cycling.
Drinking with my beach cruiser on the, Newport
right.
Beach, right? Like, that's like my extension of biking. So this was like, I was just thinking to myself, like, what's the hardest thing I could possibly do? Like, and I'm just gonna try it.
Good for you.
And so that was this, and it by far was the hardest thing I've ever done. It wasn't even close.
I like it because we read about all these prop bets with poker players, and it's something like doing.
And I had no money on it either because I just wanted to do it for like
self-satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's.
I just wanted to break 3 hours and like.
But I mean, old school is poker players, like they have a big bet to do like 1 pull-up or something, or
right.
1 lap around the track.
Strenuous physical activity
it's
for a poker
very much
player.
a sedentary group, kind of the older group.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that the younger group has a little better.
Yeah, in retrospect,
approach.
I should have hustled things because I could be like, I'll swim to like, wherever, and they'll be like, that's impossible.
Well, the fact that you've never done it before, I mean, even I might have taken some of the action the other way just because you figure he's got to be underestimating what's going to
or you could be injured. Yeah.
And like I got there, and I was telling people like, oh, this is my first triathlon, and like most of the people were like, this is like my 20th or not. I mean, maybe not that.
And they've got smaller ones, so you could have started. There's one that's like a 5K.
Right, it's called a sprint, and they're like, you shouldn't do this for your first time, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna break 3 hours, and like, no, don't even try that, just try and finish, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna break 3 hours.
And you did?
Yeah, and I got like 2:49, but
when you did the transition from the bike to the run, like were your legs like jelly? Because that's super hard.
No,
isn't it?
and like usually when I was training, like I would get off my bike and go running, and sometimes I would like almost. I never really threw up, but I would like get to the point where I would be like I'd have like vertigo. I'd be so dizzy I couldn't see where I was going, or I'd like stop halfway through my run. And I was like, God, and the run on the tri course was like 4.5 miles uphill. The last 4.5 miles, I'm like, I'm never gonna make through this run.
Right.
And I would just get off the bike and be like, I'm screwed every day. Like even a week before, I'm like, I'm screwed. And like I remember I got off the bike when I did my triathlon, and I ran for like the first like 20, 30 steps. I'm like, oh my God, I'm fine. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I was like, that was like the most exciting part because I got off the run. And I got off the bike and I was just like, God, please don't, like, my legs, please be okay.
Right.
And they were fine. I was just like, yes. I was like the happiest moment because I knew I had a shot,
Big accomplishment. I mean,
for me it was big. I mean, it was like I weigh it like equally to the tournaments, if not more, because the tournaments are like, the tournaments are very like results oriented. They have like a lot of luck, but like the triathlon, I had full control over myself.
Also, the other thing too is the tournaments. Of course, there's luck, but ability also.
Right.
In a triathlon, it's will.
Exactly.
More than anything. I mean, you have to have some conditioning, but more than anything, it's like whether you're mentally tough enough to survive the pain. And
I had a lot of pain on the last part of the run too. I was like holding my side not to like throw up and stuff, and it was bad, you know. But I was like, you know, I'm not going to stop, and like that's why I made it. So
you're going to be a contender if they have that event that Barry Greenstein told us about. I don't know if you've heard, where he proposed that at the World Series they were going to have like this marathon event. It was like a poker tournament, but it would last like
just playing start to finish, no break.
Just
breaks.
No
breaks
or anything.
No overnight.
And he was saying that eventually, Harris was intrigued, but they were concerned
liability.
that somebody would die. But if they have,
there are DJs, dude. Some people would die, man.
Right.
I mean, like
some guys would overestimate their ability to hang in that environment.
The guys who use scooters even though they can walk. Those guys.
It would be bad. I mean, I think like I don't know about something to that extreme, but I think like playing 16 hours a day or something, I'd have an edge just because not many people are in this.
Old school guys would. Even now, you hear occasionally these marathon games that go on. They're so good that nobody wants to quit, but that's where stamina comes into play.
Right.
And other guys, the only way they can keep going is
caffeine
artificially.
Or Coke. Yeah.
And that has to have
the sea drugs.
Adam, your area of expertise.
Adderall.
But, yeah, I guess.
And that may have a negative effect on your play, even if it keeps you going.
Yeah, and I never really resorted to that. I mean, I've taken caffeine before, like cappuccino, but I never did Coke or anything to play. I was just like, well,
I was referring to my own practices.
No, I just thought working out to
Even you don't take the Coke to play. I want to clarify.
Not to play. Not to play.
No, I just think to build up endurance would be good. But I mean, I didn't go to that extreme just to be able to play an extra 2 hours of poker. It was more it was this added benefit.
You've got the long view.
Yeah.
Right. Anyhow, it's been a pleasure to have you. Very interesting.
Thanks, Alec.
And,
I'm really glad.
I like kind of getting a perspective on some of these games that we don't always see or hear about. Yeah. But it's a pleasure having you. Good luck and everything.
Great, thanks so much.
And thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Reach us on The Scoop at cardplayer.com.
2 bracelets. Awesome.
Well, these aren't easy to win. I remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my left. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So, I had to call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.